Welcome to Inspired. I'm Alexa Von Tobel. Picture this. Right now, there's a water pipe in your city about to burst, an electrical transformer showing early signs of failure, and we have no idea until it's too late. We're managing critical infrastructure in an outdated way, sending people out to physically check on things, hoping nothing breaks. The Romans would be laughing at us. But what if every piece of infrastructure could tell us exactly how it's doing? What if we could predict problems before they happen? Today, I'm sitting down with Alex Hawkinson, the visionary making the future a reality through BrightAI. You may know Alex as the father of IoT, the mind behind SmartThings, which he grew into a platform supporting over 1 billion connected devices before Samsung's acquisition. Now he's tackling an even bigger challenge, awakening America's critical infrastructure through physical AI. With nearly 500,000 sensors already deployed in the real world, BrightAI is transforming how we manage everything from water systems to electrical grids. They're creating an entirely new layer between our aging infrastructure and the digital intelligence that can save it. What fascinates me most about Alex is his swing big mentality. As he puts it, it's as equally challenging to start any business, so you might as well tackle the biggest problems. And infrastructure impacts billions of people who depend on these essential services every single day. This is exactly the kind of impossible seeming challenge that gets me excited. And that's why we at Inspired Capital just co-led BrightAI Series A alongside Khosla. Joining me today is a fellow Inspired investor, Chris Brown. Let's dive right in. If you're running a startup, we know things like managing equity and communicating with investors are always top of mind. Carta has built a connected suite of tools that over 40,000 companies use to do just that. Their platform of software and services helps you lay the groundwork so you can focus on building. To learn more or get started, visit carta.com. And with that, I'm so excited to welcome Alex. Alex, first of all, Chris Brown and I are thrilled to have you on today. As the father of IoT, as somebody who has changed the world for technology for all of us, for over 1 billion connected devices, we're just so excited to talk to you today and get your thoughts on the future. Additionally, we're so excited to be new investors in BrightAI. So for full disclosure, I don't think we could be more enthusiastic about what you're up to and what you're building. As somebody who's built 6 companies, which is pretty rare. I think I've had a lot of repeat founders. I've had a lot of 3-time founders, 6-time founders, and I actually genuinely think you probably even forgot some companies you've started. I want to just start with your childhood, and let's go to the early psychology around failure and risk. Clearly something happened growing up in Minnesota that made you super comfortable with going and doing hard things and swinging big. Tell us about that.
I have to analyze you in psychology, on these things, but definitely I had a lot of lucky circumstances. So, grew up in a family of entrepreneurs all the way back to my great grandparents immigrated, and then a grandfather who, grew up in a tiny small town and sort of made a lot for himself, building a big construction company after World War II. And my parents were both entrepreneurs, and they had ups and downs. So I had the economic, peaks and valleys and other things. And they were also really busy. So I had a childhood where I was, in the dirt out in the backyard playing with on my own and figuring things out as I went. So, grew up with, this sort of the attitude that, anything's possible and, you create the jobs, you create the world that you want to be a part of, and had a lot of inspiring examples in my family around that. And then, my grandfather had been this incredibly inspiring example who had, done very well economically and then sort of given it all away to the forestry department at the University of Minnesota, which is what sort of discovered him and brought him up from nothing. And, I just had that, when the low points happened in my parents and their businesses, there was this moments where, I had that inspiring example in the background and I want to really do well. I had this fire and ambition from the beginning. And so, that was a part of it. And then it had wonderful teachers along the way. I've always been a curious guy, but I had incredible teachers, particularly one in high school who just inspired me to just question everything and, dig under the covers and sort of tinker and get to the root level of problems and other things like that. So all those things sort of contributed to it. And then, of course, as an entrepreneur, it's self-reinforcing. It's so much fun to build businesses and teams and products that make a dent in the world.
I want to shift into kind of your early life. SmartThings was actually your fourth startup, not your first. Tell us a little bit about where that idea came from. And I know Chris and I have so many questions we want to ask you on building that company that you ultimately sold.
With SmartThings, I would say, the earlier, I had there's a good time for everything. And there had been earlier IoT things, but I was really had built SaaS businesses before that and not touched anything in hardware. And it was really born out of a set of circumstances and a personal event. So I had a remote mountain house that my family was, has in the distant mountains in Colorado that's really off the grid. And we went up there at one point and we found the house destroyed by a freezing and flooding event. Like when you grow up in Minnesota, if you depending on where you're from, you don't have this experience. But when you see ice shooting out from under the front door on the porch, it's a bad sign. It means like water's pouring out from inside. So we found this. There was like a power outage, and found the house destroyed by a sort of a freezing and flooding, event and those things. And it was at this moment in 2011 where we had iPhones, at that point, and you had a Kindle, that could download books over the air. And it was just so shocking as a consumer that like, how is it possible that all these things are connected everywhere? And yet our home is not, it's this huge emotional place where a lot of your assets are and otherwise. And so SmartThings was really born out of that and this tinkering and curiosity. I was like lucky to be off the grid. So there wasn't like monitoring services available from like ADT or somebody. And so I just like looked online, got an Arduino, started and built my own cellular connected sensor hub for the house. And the big idea for SmartThings then kind of came a couple months after that, where I was like, gosh, if I could build a connected device like this, anybody could do this. And there's going to be a rush of these, connected devices everywhere. And there really needs to be a platform behind it. So the big aha moment for SmartThings was it was actually founded as Physical Graph Corporation. Super dorky, unsellable name, but actually led in some ways to BrightAI, later down the road. But the idea was if everything's going to be connected, just like you have with your phone, there needs to be an ecosystem of creative application developers that can actually bring this all together and sort of make magical applications happen. So that was sort of the origin.
I don't think many people really appreciate the scale that SmartThings ended up getting to. Give us a sense of kind of where things got when you were there. And then, if I'm not mistaken, it's still kind of up and running, a sense of where things are now.
Yeah, it continues to grow, and it's an honor and just sort of like humbling and exciting and all those things at the same time to see where it went. But because in the beginning it was like our devices. I think it was like my hub, and then some sensors that we created and otherwise. But the scale, today it's roughly 500 million homes. Almost every country in the world. There's at least a couple billion connected devices. There's something on the order of there's millions of events per second that flow through the platform from all these connected devices everywhere, and more than 500,000, developer integrations with third-party devices and all sorts of things like that. So it's reached a pretty exciting scale on a lot of levels. And during my tenure, we went from 1 to like 2 to 4 to 8 and other stuff. And I remember I don't remember the exact number of devices as we had our initial like partnership with Samsung and otherwise, but certainly millions of devices connected to the platform at that time. And we're at that knee of the curve where we had individual days where we'd add more devices to the platform than we had so far on the platform at that time. And that's an amazing thing to experience as an entrepreneur, where you just feel like, wow, thank you. Thank you and sorry all at the same time, all the things, you still have to get right. But, yeah.
Every time I turn the TV on and it says SmartThings, I'm like, I know him. I think 1 billion connected devices fostering an ecosystem of 250,000 developers before the acquisition of Samsung in 2014. I mean, that's wild. You were the person who made all of our devices talk to each other, made them smarter, made our lives easier and function. And you have this great question that I want to ask, which is, you mentioned through your life, you look for the right combination, the right experience for you, and the chance to change the world, and that you like to make sure you're asking the right question, which is what led you to BrightAI. But tell me what you mean by that.
Well, my parents ran a search firm. So I grew up at the kitchen table was like team dynamics or everything and all of that stuff. And I find a lot of joy in whatever the hill is, like if you're playing a game or you're building a company or whatever, like conquering the hill with the team is so fun. That's what brings joy, right? And I think joy of discovery and curiosity and the rest of it. But so I, from the very beginning, loved, looking around the corner and seeing what's coming with technology and building products and teams. But there's sort of paradoxically recognized that I feel like along the way, I was working on the wrong problems, because if you have a great team, they can make a bad idea work. It's like a dangerous thing to have a great team. You can push the wrong boulder up the wrong hill, and it's just too difficult. And if you pick the right problem, ask the right question, it's like everything is so much easier. All the same dynamics with the team and conquering a hill and building a product, all that gratification is there. But you're not pushing against something. You're sort of doing something the universe needs in a sense. And so I feel like for me anyway, I think some people discover this earlier in their life or just stumble into the right problem at the right time. But I feel like I have a mantra about this that I use for other entrepreneurs, but it's like, I feel like I should have calibrated earlier. And if I'd spent some of the time that I had in my 20s and 30s and 40s now, if I'd spent it on better problems, I could have done even more in the world than I've done. So it's been a gradual process of discovery, and I'm really thoughtful now. Like, is this a problem that is meaningful? And the best team members and the best capital wants to be a part of it when it is. So,
I want to transition into BrightAI, which when we met you, and clearly, literally the godfather of IoT and connected devices, and your aha moment of being like, let's get these outside of the home and let's go put these in the world where everybody needs more visibility, more reliability, observability. We met you and we're like, wow, this is a huge idea. What was the aha moment from Bright, which you started in 2019? You're now, call it 6 years in. Tell us what the aha was, and what is the mission and thesis of the company?
It goes back to SmartThings at some level. So, I told you SmartThings was the name of the company was actually Physical Graph Corporation. And the idea was like, the world is all going to become connected. These physical spaces are going to become connected, and we can make them smarter, and so much good can come from that. And it sort of accidentally became a smart home company. Like, that was the big idea, wasn't to be in the home. But, in companies, you got to be careful, as you get going and you get a brand and investors pile and other things like that, you get pressured into a space. You've defined yourself in some way. And it became a smart home company, and it's great. It's been a great journey, the rest of it. But I will say, along the way, my wife, who's like my soulmate, was my biggest fan and critic. She progressively disliked the platform more and more as time went on. She's just not a fan of home automation. And she'd bring up the lights would go on at times when she didn't want them to because I had some rule running or whatever. And she's like, you don't need this. Is this an important problem? And so along the way, I really started to just percolate, is this the best and highest use of these technologies? And I think for humanity, and clearly, I think as a parent and as a experienced entrepreneur, the answer to me was no, but the bigger opportunity was outside of the home. And so that was sort of the initial inspiration. And then down the line, we quickly discovered, okay, what are the biggest problems you can go solve? And it's the essential services. Like, what are the things that humanity shuts down if they don't work well? Power, energy, water. A hot day like the last few days. Like HVAC. Pest control. All these things, but these things that literally humanity all depends on. And how do you bring physical AI and that idea of this physically connected intelligence to those things? So that was sort of the inspiration behind it. And I knew I could do it based on, the consumer space is really hard to get right. So at some levels, we're doing a lot of crazy breakthrough things, but this is an easier market to go after.
Alex, let's talk about this sticker. And I remember when Chris Brown grabbed me and was like, Alexa, this sticker is incredible. Tell us about the sticker and what the sticker's a foundational beginning of Bright's platform. What is it?
Well, I would say, now that we're in, a number of years, as you said, we've sort of recognized at the beginning we didn't have a sense of, okay, so what does it mean? What does it mean to solve these problems, in essential services with physical AI? And it turns out it's kind of really two big things. And the baseline is what I call observability. So you need to know what's going on in these physical environments. I mean, if you take the electrical power distribution grid as an example, all of these far-flung 130 million wooden power poles in the United States alone, you don't have eyes on them. So you have to send out people and drones and other things to say, oh, is this pole leaning? Is there vegetation over this one? Is it rotting? Is it whatever? Just taking that one tiny example. And so much of the friction in these industries is based on the need to send people out to go in an old-fashioned way to go check on this infrastructure and things. So a key aspect is if you can make it so that that's observable all the time, you just know what's going on out in the physical world, it unlocks incredible productivity and incredible, capital efficiency and quality gains and other things. So long way to say that all is said, if you have to have a way to solve for observability, and that's a really tough problem. And so Bright has, long and short, we've created a product that we'll be announcing more formally, in the fall, but it solves at least 100x's the observable physical spaces for these critical infrastructure companies in a way that's never been possible before. So it basically lets you put senses on with edge AI, full interpretation, as though you had a technician sitting at every power pole would be an example there, or at every 10 feet of pipeline, along a pipeline or whatever it might be. And it's just an incredible opportunity to sort of let really smart operators have all the information they need to make the world better.
So we'll talk about the tech behind that in a minute, which you should absolutely run folks through. But before we do that, you have this analogy you use referencing Roman infrastructure, which the internet's going to love because of this, recent meme-worthy conversation around how frequently we all think about the Roman Empire. And I won't do it justice, but run us through that. Run us through that for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, we live in a 260-year-old house, and we're history buffs. My wife's getting a PhD in global history now and other things. But it struck me along the way as I went out, I have a hard hat collection over there from you to learn about these spaces as a curiosity in me. I had to put aside the dorky, I'm still dorky, but put aside the pale white skin and business shirts and put on the hard hats and get out there. But you go out into these physical environments where the infrastructure all is, and you watch the work that's happening. And no kidding, it just struck me we're still in the Roman era of infrastructure management for these critical services. The Romans were actually incredibly sophisticated for the time. Their aqueducts, they built periodic inspection ports, which just happened to line up exactly with manholes. And our current inspection ports, they had trained technicians, they wouldn't call them technicians, but artisans, that know about inspecting and managing this type of infrastructure. And they'd send them out periodically. They'd proactively check on things. They'd fix it if it needed to be, all that. And basically, we're still running the world the same way, which is just crazy. And I like to say the Romans would be laughing at us because they'd just be like, you have all these technologies and you're doing it like we did. Come on, all of that. So I think that's where that comes from. And it always, it gets a laugh with some of course, these are great operators and there's a lot of great people working on this infrastructure, but it is striking that they're still, and it's because they're blind to the observability and they don't have access to all these next gen technologies in all cases that we're trying to help them with.
Alex, I want to double click on, let's just take an example so that everyone that's listening, that's cool, Bright sounds amazing. We want more observability in our infrastructure in the world. Let's take an example. Maybe let's use the poles. Every electrical pole, telephone pole, etc. What do these stickers do, and what kind of information does it give back to our Con Edison, for example?
Yeah, so we're building, the stickers are amazing. So the idea is you can deploy them in a minute and they last forever in an environment and they give you full pattern recognition, not just simple sensor data, but they let you understand with all the senses as though you had a technician there. And they have, we have versions with eyes and ears, and not literally, but audio sensors and visual sensors and temperature and humidity and vibration and everything else you could do. So imagine you just have this thing and you can put whatever senses you want and you just put it on every pole. And then whatever you could do with those senses, if you were a trained technician, you can kind of do with the sticker. So is there, in the power pole example, it's like, they have to tell us, but it's, what I've seen so far, is there vegetation? Is there a tree encroaching on the power lines that in a storm could, brush against it and knock it over? Is a pole leaning, too much in one direction, so it's more fragile so that a big storm could come through and it could fall over? Is there a rot, in the wood of the pole, as determined by a bunch of different factors? Is there sparking of equipment? Did a transformer crack for some reason? And there's like arcing, up at the top of the pole that could trigger a wildfire, those things. So a sticker could let you know all those things in that context. In the same way, if you pick a totally different industry, it lets you understand the context of what you care about in that part of the infrastructure. And it's like waving a magic wand. It lets them just know all the time. And so when something's about to go, you can be proactive instead of totally reactive. You know exactly where to go to cut the vegetation back, to fix the rot, to, replace the pole before it becomes something that, I think in America alone, it's 150 billion a year or so in economic, impact from just power outages, let alone the life damage. You look at what happened in LA this year or other things like that. Just, it's such a big problem. So it lets you solve that by being proactive, by having that observability.
And before Bright, that would have been literally hundreds, thousands of people checking each pole with their pen and paper. And so that's what's so powerful.
It'd be like hundreds of thousands of people. I think it's exactly, you really had no choice. I can get into the technology why that's the case, but, you in all these industries, they send people out for periodic inspections. And in some cases, it's so crazy you have to do it every day. You have to send somebody just in case, right? In some cases, it's every 30 days. In power poles, we can only basically afford to send someone every 10 years, or something to these things, just because the economics and how distributed these, 130 million poles is. And it just was impossible before. So it very costly and very periodic. So, there's been no good answer. And I think we're providing a pretty magical answer.
Why don't we talk about the tech piece for a moment? One of the things that's struck us and inspired the most in our convos with you is, there are certainly some aspects of this kind of platform shift that we're moving through from, the 2017 attention is all you need paper and transformer architecture that folks are well aware of. And then there's some things happening that folks aren't super aware of that are playing a huge role in the platform that Bright's building, kind of edge computing and, on-device inference, so on and so forth. Run folks through kind of like what is really changing capability in physical AI products and some of the kind of product theses that you and the team at Bright hold that's making the impact you just talked about in the industries possible.
The reason things keep accelerating in the world, in my view, is just the layering of all these technologies, available technologies together. So, of course, IoT is maturing and AI generally and methodologies for that. Everybody sees that maturing. But the breakthrough that we've been part of creating here is that, I'll give you an example. Like if you've ever been in a room with a motion activated light switch and the lights still turn off when you're in the room and you have to wave your arms around to get them to go again. It's an example that a simple sensor basically doesn't give you the pattern that you need. That's just generally true. The world is complicated, and to sort of recognize the patterns that you care about that would trigger you to go replace the power pole or whatever it might be are relatively complicated. And so it takes computation. And computation is very energy intensive, and you have to do it somewhere to get these patterns right. And so we, could go on and on about this, but basically in a nutshell, we've been limited in the places we can observe by power access and networking access in a pretty strong way. And so Bright has created a breakthrough in its platform that allows us to solve that energy problem and do complex computation with this multimodal sensing and recognize the patterns out in these places that have just literally never been possible before. And there's a bunch of underlying technologies and things that lead to that. But that's sort of the key breakthrough. So everybody's seen IoT and AI and these in internet and mobile and all those things, of course, accelerating, but they weren't reaching the 99% of the world that doesn't have access to ready access to power and network and so on. And so by being able to suddenly push all that technology all the way to the extreme edge, you suddenly can observe and take proactive action, driven by AI in the 99% of the world that hasn't been reached so far.
Now we understand the macro problem, which is that we're still kind of leaning on the infrastructure that the Romans would be familiar with. And now we have kind of the technology setting. Let's just fast forward a decade. Tell us what you think Bright can be, and kind of in your words, what the future of physical AI ends up looking like.
It's pretty exciting. I mean, I think it's moving so fast that I think it's 10 years is like quite a horizon. I think in 4 years we can do what I think about now. But it's a combination of clearly we can basically digital twin the world, would be like a pithy way of saying it. So all the places that you would want to observe, you'll be able to understand what's going on. And through that understanding and delayed observability, you can predict what's going to happen in all of these different places. So we can go from being very reactive around all this critical infrastructure to being suddenly totally proactive on it. And what happens with that is massive productivity. All the unnecessary trips go away. All the too late or super critical trips can be done in a nice plan. So right at the right time, solving it. So it's at least a 50% productivity lift across every one of these physical industries. And it's a lot of the economy. It's at least a doubling of capital efficiency so that bad things don't happen as much when you're proactive. You can maintain it and make it last much longer. Quality goes up, sustainability is reached, all of those things. So observability alone has a huge impact. But then if you look out a few years, we're also getting deeply into robotics. And so you can also then automate the actions that you can take to go solve things even more quickly, because we're very labor limited and it's very difficult to train people. And it's very also brutal, dirty, dangerous, hard hat work, in a lot of these places. And so as you look out a couple of years, you're not only going to have observability everywhere and this proactivity that doubles, massively improves the quality, unlocks our ability to, solve all this crumbling infrastructure everywhere, but you're also going to have complete automation and autonomy and robotics that can actually go out and address these issues like super quickly. So it's a world where I think Bright basically can be the physical AI platform covering observability and action across all these physical industries. And I think the implications are, an abundance of high quality, key underlying essential services that the world relies on. And that's like something even my wife thinks is cool. It's a good thing.
The ultimate litmus test.
Yeah. We'll take her thumbs up. We like it when she pushes you. Alex, at this point, you guys, just to give a sense of the categories of incredible pull of business that you have, it runs pest control, water, HVAC, electrical, energy, where you can just dramatically make companies so much more efficient. You talk about this layer observability, which is you're sort of owning the layer between the real world and the robots. And actually that for me was such a clear picture where you are the infrastructure layer, the software layer between those two things. Let's talk a little bit about your predictions. What do you see from this very unique perch, having spent your entire career owning the Internet of Things? What do you see that's going to be possible? Give us a sense of what can I look forward to and how my life's going to get better?
I think it's like I said before. I think it's that this so much economic value unlock, for all of these things, so much quality of life unlock for all of these things, and so much sustainability unlock for all of these things. So in the worldwide economy, it's something like 85% of the worldwide economy is these physical industries. like 80, if there's 120 trillion or something in global GDP, I'm probably off in that number, by some tens of trillions of dollars, but it's a big number. And, something like 85% of that is these physical industries. And you go look at it, and if you can provide a better quality of service with like half the economic cost related to those things, half the people cost, those other things, that obviously just creates an unlock of economic value in a huge way. Also, if you have steady access to power, all the things you want to do with these things, if you have steady access to clean water, if you have steady access to, pest-free environments for your food supply, or otherwise, like, what does that do for sort of quality of life, and lack of economic disruption and lots of different spaces there. And so I think it's part of like, it's like this foundational layer for civilization. It's not the BrightAI is not doing we're not going to do the self-generating, video game that's going to be photorealistic that you're going to be loving and enjoying with your things. But I think we are going to unlock these like key economic release of economic friction. We're going to release these like great services for all the things humanity depends on. And I think we'll meet most of the sustainability goals in all those physical industries for working towards climate change and doing a better job of being stewards on Earth and so on in the process, which feels good.
And when you think about, it's almost interesting to think about this evolutionary chart of the hardware products that will get us there, with kind of sensors on the left, and then, drone observability and, kind of quadruped robots, humanoid form factors.
Sure. Yeah.
What do you think the hardware form factor ends up looking like? Is it kind of the, theoretical kind of movie humanoid, or do you think that it'll look substantially different than that in the home or in the field?
It's interesting to think about. I think about it in these layers. Like today we're building these stickers. So you'll have like observability built everywhere. At some point, I think maybe you can just dump these things out of the back of planes and we'll just have whole sections of the earth that become observable in this way. And there's implications of that we could talk about and otherwise. But it's going to be observability through edge AI that you almost can't even see everywhere, in a sense. And then when there's an issue, what do you send to do it? In some cases, you're going to send people. And people, for us, we've got this wearable technology that we're launching. It's like the frontline worker is an embodiment of AI. They're sensing and being helped and co-piloted as they go. And so there's a lot of that great stuff, to support the workers in the industry now. And then you're going to have different types of robots that do the repetitive, dirty, dangerous, stuff. And so I think I'm a big believer in the humanoid robot path, like out some number of years. It's going to take some time to get there. But I think BrightAI will be one of the key basically operators of or deployers of those humanoid robot fleets, because you have the observability. Where do you send the humanoid robot to do this difficult task, to maintain this infrastructure, et cetera? But there's going to be places that the humanoid robots can't go to, like an 8-inch sewer pipe. Like we're not going down that, and neither is the humanoid robot. So you have to create specialized robots that are tuned to the type of infrastructure in different cases too. So you're going to see a lot of crazy stuff happening in an automated way, but it's that's sort of the footprint. Observability on the edge, humans that look like they're not RoboCop or something, but they're carrying like hidden sensors and edge AI with them, and they're being guided and doing the work. And then all sorts of specialized formats of robots that are tuned to do this infrastructure work.
Alex, I want you to build me a special vest just to move through my life in New York City. I'll take one.
Good. Yeah, sounds good.
As we think a little bit more about just predictions, and you just described basically we're going to sense the entire world, and then we're going to determine based on what's happening whether we send a small robot, a robot, fully on its own to the dirty and dangerous, or a human that's fully augmented by technology. And we're going to stop problems, fix problems, save billions of dollars of critical infrastructure. And I think, post-COVID and everything that we've seen just in the last few years, the world's been a really complicated place. And I think we've started to see how fragile our society can be when something really catastrophic happens, a fire incident, a water incident. So I fully get that. What's next? What do you see like that continues to unlock.
Speculating outside of BrightAI, or do you want to be keeping it?
Yeah. Like
take it all the way.
I mean, you've only built 7,000 companies, so we want to know what you see next.
I mean, it's a lot to be said. I mean, of course, all of us in this age, right, are thinking about where AI is going, and things are continuing to accelerate. And I see no reason why things are not going to continue to accelerate. Like, I think all of clearly the basis is there for that to occur. So at a society level, there's of course tremendous risks, but I'm optimistic. I think there's this incredible opportunity and world of abundance that we're going towards, where all of these goods and services, like all these critical services we're talking about, we can deliver higher quality services for much less economic input. In a sense, we're going to save trillions of dollars and just make billions in the process. And I think that same thing exists across so many different spaces. So I think we're on the edge of a proliferation of any deterministic system, which physics, science, chemistry, biology, like all of these things we're going to have at the minimum sort of superhuman scientists that are augmented by these tools, and likely AI that's helping propel us into this incredible period of discovery and technological unlock that brings anything you can imagine to everything you can imagine to everybody on the planet. And I think that's the opportunity. And of course, if we screw that up as a society, there's ways we can get that wrong. I think, tend to be a big believer in humanity and, our ability to figure out really difficult problems when we put our minds to it. But I think we're in for the Star Trek, sort of the better side of the Star Trek future, hopefully without the dark age right before the first contact and all of that.
We'll take that. Alex, you said something to me at dinner the other night that really stuck with me, which is how you coached your daughter that for the first time in history, every idea she has as a scientist, as a scholar, she can put into motion. And actually that for me was like a big visual unlock where you were like, every one of your hypotheses, every one of your theses, you can run those simultaneously for the first time, and versus one at a time, arduously, laboriously, you actually can go and work on all of your ideas at the same time.
Totally.
That for me was like a powerful visual of just the unlock that we're really seeing, which is we can run more tests at a time, we can run after more things at a time. And in some ways, Alex, you kind of term this like we're at the start of a new industrial revolution in so many ways with what you're doing with BrightAI. Say a little bit more about that.
Well, I think we're at this point in time where, it'd be interesting to talk about job loss and AI and other things too, which is a big topic now. But generally speaking, I think we're just like, people can imagine so much more things to do than we're doing today. Like like a lot of the people that I know, and my daughter's in this list, like, you're limited by labor, you're limited by resources to go out and do the things you can imagine, in the world. And so as we're getting these tools, I think Steve Jobs said it's like computers like a bicycle for your mind. I don't know what this is. It's like a Ferrari, for your mind. It's more, right? It's like something, crazy for your mind, like a rocket ship for your mind. But we're in this place where you can suddenly explore your ideas, And so a lot of our customers, as example, they're growing, they're hiring more people now as a result of these technologies, not less, because there's so much work that they couldn't get out and do to address this infrastructure in our case, or otherwise. But, I think that applies to every field. Like my daughter's, she's graduating with a degree in neuroscience and is going down the research path on like understanding how the mind works and otherwise. And I think, for somebody right now, these tools over the course of the coming years, just like you said, Alexa, I think that they let you explore instead of being limited in, just the work you can do and analyze in an individual lab, hands-on and otherwise. You can suddenly, create 1,000 experiments and run them all at the same time and explore different avenues and so on. So what an exciting time. If you're curious, if you're relentless, if you apply yourself, there's just a chance, right, with these tools to like amplify your abilities in 1,000-fold.
If you're on a startup or you're doing things like managing investors, issuing equity, or getting valuations, then we suggest taking a look at Carta. Carta has built an entire connected suite of tools that's designed to help you manage equity, stay compliant with the IRS, and provide unprecedented transparency to your investors. Whether you're hashing out early ownership with your co-founders or getting ready to exit, Carta speaks startup. There's a reason they're the industry standard for cap tables, 409As, and stock comp expense accounting. So if you're not managing equity on Carta already, we recommend you check them out. To learn more or get started, visit carta.com.
Let's talk about the job loss piece for a second. And, it's obviously interesting in general, but one of the reasons that it's such a multi-threaded conversation is there's a bunch of different ways that you can look at that, right? There's a real argument that Bright's product is going to create a safer work environment for some period of time for a lot of folks. And then there's another lens to look at the employment narrative, which is just pure like labor displacement. And then there's a third, maybe, which is, people are going to have a lot more leisure time, which in general is symbol of a highly functioning and technologically efficient society. And so I think there are a lot of different ways that folks can kind of approach that conversation. I'm sure you've thought about it a bunch. Give us a sense of, what your current thinking is.
My current thinking, it's a tough one. No one really knows here, as we're going. But what I see so far is a lot of growth, like in the companies that we're working with. And I think it's because there's so much, like, my litmus test, this sounds stupid, but I'll say it's the world as awesome as it can be. Is it peak awesome now? Like, obviously the answer is no, right? And there's so much to go do to make it better. And people want to do that work. And so if you give them the tools, they can suddenly actually reach and be more productive and reach more environments and do more things. Like, there's like this, we're like underwater at some level and we're swimming towards the surface with our productivity. We're like less than we need to do all the things we can imagine. And I think we're in for a period that's like that. And then the questions come really on the back of robotics, and physical labor also being automated, and all of those things, and just the pace with which things are happening. Can the economy adapt fast enough to allow new jobs to sort of surge into existence that sort of take all this up? And there's a lot of complexity around that a lot of us are going to really have to work hard in thinking through. But I think one of the outcomes will be that there will be this abundance of production. And assuming we figure out how to distribute the means to consume, those goods and services to everybody in a great, equitable way that doesn't undermine, the ambition of people to sort of go off and do breakthrough things and so on as well. Then I think there's this context where people will choose to take the productivity and apply it to like more leisure time, instead. And that would be wonderful. I mean, I'd love to have more time on a bunch of different levels with stargazing, my kids, okay, first and foremost, our new puppy, everything else that you can imagine. So I think all those things are possible. It's going to be, I hope, a world where you have an election, around what that is. If you want to, you're just going to be an infinity of things you can go apply yourself to make the world a better place, or whatever your definition of that is. And I think there's also going to be a place where people are going to be able to work far less and still live a great life experientially, for whatever they choose for that.
Alex, in our last few minutes, I want to cover a few topics. Particularly entrepreneurial mindset. So not only are you a repeat entrepreneur, you've sold a number of companies. Bright's on a path to being a category defining company, literally. How do you manage stress? I mean, I've gotten to know you pretty well. I kind of feel like stress doesn't hit you. And I believe people have good tricks for it. What's yours?
Man. I don't know if it's constitutional or not. I've always, of course you have your freak out moments, but they're few and far between for me. I'll give you some examples. I mean, I take what I call think walks. So I'm a big believer in sort of background processing, like when you're thinking about important problems. And it's when I slip out of this habit, which has been so crazy the last few months that I've slipped out of it. But generally speaking, I try to take a think walk every day. And that's where you just pick one problem that's been bothering you. And the discipline is I'm not going to do anything but think about this problem until I reach a local maxima or it's resolved in my mind. And sometimes I'll take a walk and like 3 minutes in, I'll be like, oh, okay, this is what I should do. I'm not getting more productivity out of thinking about this. But other times it'll take the entire walk and I'll think about that. And so I think by like the physical exercise, being out in nature, and just like giving yourself time to sort of process something and be focused, to me, that's really de-stressing, in a way. Like it gives you a space to not be frenetic and, just solve a problem at a time. But if you watch the movie The Martian, it's like solve one problem after another. Like if you're in a stressful shit situation, just like start solving problems, start moving, and same thing when you have ideas for conquering the world or doing something really cool, like start moving.
My next question is about your ambition, which one of the things I'm personally extremely fascinated by is just this like exceptional American ambition. It's almost part of our culture. And you even said, actually, I love this one sentence you said, your family background gave you entrepreneurship as a birthright because you came from so many entrepreneurs that it almost probably just felt like your natural skin to be a founder entrepreneur. But I'm really struck by your ambition, Alex, which is you've been really successful. You've made lots of money. None of that is really what motivates you. And even with BrightAI, your ambition is palpable. You can feel that you want to build the $1 trillion company, as we've discussed. Explain that. Where does that come from?
For me, it's as you get older, your ambition should go up, not down. I mean, like, I don't know, you reach an age and things happen to people you love, and you see tragedy in the world, and you see beauty in the world and all those things. And, time is short. So what are you going to do with it? You're going to like pitter it away, not making something impactful, or should you go for it? And so for me anyway, the gauge has been, how can I have the maximum impact possible on the biggest problem that I can think of, that I have that I have some background experience and sort of ability to impact, in a direct way, logically. So it's like a calibration on that. So to me, the time for, I like when you're young, I like, do whatever you want, like all the rest of it. But it's, I guess it's that, you feel like, I think it's a time in humanity where I think we recognize that if you don't recognize, you're not looking at it the right way. Like it's a time where even if we could keep going the way we've been going, we shouldn't. Like it's a time where you look around the world, you look at this moment in time in history, you look at the planets, you look at the climate, you look at the geopolitical situation, you look at, everything else. And it's like a time for all hands on the flywheel. So like, to me, it's just, I can't imagine, I don't know, it's constitutional, but I can't imagine this time in my life not trying to do the biggest thing possible with my time. And so for me, it's this like try to help in this small way, these underpinnings of civilization work a little better.
I hope that you inspire more people to think that way, because I agree there have literally never been more problems in the world as we've all, the three of us, have moved through it. And we need more people like you feeling like that's the only thing that we should be doing. And so just sincerely thank you for being a leader as a human being that people can look up to. I want to end on the quick fire round here, where I'm just going to ask you questions. First thing that comes to your mind, Chris and I are dying to ask you a few quick things here. The first is, if you could have dinner with any founder, entrepreneur, or human, who?
Oh, man.
I know it's a hard one.
Gosh, that is a really tough one. I know you're looking for the rapid fire answer. Like could I teleport in time, too?
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, probably Bill Gates, honestly. Like I find him one of the most interesting, thoughtful human beings, on the planet. And I think his life experience would be great to hang with him more.
I love that. Complete the sentence. The biggest mistake that you see an entrepreneur make is?
Working on the wrong problem for too long. So my mantra that I mentioned earlier is like, it takes 3 to 5 years to build something great, but you should know in 18 months. And what I mean by that is like, it takes time to do something impactful. Like it just doesn't come overnight, and you have to stay with it and be relentless. But if you don't, you should feel it. Like if the indicators in the world 18 months and you're not feeling it, like probably you're solving the wrong problem, like you're not making the headway on it, and you could use your time in a different way. But Yeah.
The problem should be bigger.
Solve the right problem.
Yeah.
Like the best capital, the best people, and all things, it's as easy to solve the bigger problems as it is to solve the smallest problems as an entrepreneur. So go for the big ones.
I think we should brand that on you, like go for the big problems. I think that is very you. What's a book that changed your life?
Gosh, I mean, I think The Invention of Yesterday. It's an incredible look back over human history and blending of ideas and other things. So in terms of giving me a sense of space and in humanity and otherwise, but highly recommended.
We'll borrow one question from one of our favorite content producers. What's the kindest thing that anyone's ever done for you?
Holy cow. I've had a lot of really kind things done for me over time. It's hard to pick one example. I'll pick an example. Is this high school teacher, John Kozier, just his willingness to sort of lend a hand of and the stupidest questions I could ask, following down with excitement and curiosity down the rabbit holes, encouraging diving down the rabbit holes in that way. So John Kozier, like that endless fount of curiosity and willingness to go down any rabbit hole with me.
Hat tip to John Kozier.
Yeah, no, I love that one. And the final question is there a motto or a phrase that you kind of live by?
Be relentless and be curious.
I love it. That is very you too. That is you in human form. I love it. Well, Alex, thank you so much for joining us today. Chris Brown, thank you so much. Alex, we're so blessed and lucky to be on this adventure with you. And I can't wait to see what we accomplish over the next decade. Thank you so much, sincerely.
Thank you. I'm so excited to work together.
And everybody out there, if you want to learn about BrightAI, check it out. All companies need it. Check out BrightAI. Thank you. Thanks so much for tuning in today. If you've enjoyed the episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. We'll be back with another episode of Inspired with Alex Von Tobel soon. Thank you.